I can't feel my legs." The words hung in the air like a death sentence as Kwame Asani stared at the pristine white ceiling of Nairobi Hospital's VIP wing. His fiancée, Dr. Zura Mwangi, froze beside his bed, her coffee cup slipping from trembling fingers and shattering against the marble floor. Like and subscribe if you want to see how far a billionaire will go to test true love. What did you just say? Zara's voice cracked, her medical training warring with raw emotion. She was still in her surgical scrubs, having rushed straight from an emergency operation when she heard about the accident. The doctors, they said the spinal compression. Kwame let his voice trail off, watching her face carefully. Every micro-expression was crucial now. Would she run? Would she stay out of pity? Or would she reveal what he desperately needed to know? That her love wasn't built on his billions? 3 weeks earlier, he'd overheard her sister Wanjiku at their engagement party. Smart girls are marrying Africa's youngest tech billionaire. She'll never have to work another day in her life. The words had eaten at him like acid. Was that all he was to her? A ticket to financial freedom? Now, as he watched Zara's dark eyes fill with tears, Kwame felt the weight of his deception. The fake accident reports he'd paid the corrupt hospital administrator to create. The bribes to the emergency crew who'd staged the scene at his Muthaiga home. Even the doctors standing in the hallway, paid actors from Nairobi's film industry. "I need to see the scans myself," Zara said, her neurosurgeon instincts kicking in. She wiped her tears and moved toward the door with purpose. "No." Kwame's voice came out sharper than intended. I trust you, but I can't bear to see the damage myself. Please just stay with me." Zara paused, her hand on the door handle. For a terrifying moment, Kwame thought she'd push through anyway. But then she turned back, her expression shifting from clinical to deeply personal. "How bad is it, Kwame? Complete or partial?" The medical terminology rolled off her tongue with practiced ease. Kwame had rehearsed this moment 100 times, but hearing her speak as both doctor and lover made his throat tighten with unexpected guilt. "Complete. T12 vertebra." He'd researched enough to sound convincing. They say I'll never walk again." The silence stretched between them like a chasm. Outside the window, Nairobi's evening traffic hummed its familiar symphony, oblivious to the drama playing out in the hospital room. Kwame's empire, the tech company that had grown from a single internet cafe in Kibera to dominating East Africa's digital landscape, meant nothing now. All that mattered was the woman standing frozen at his bedside. "I'll learn," Zara whispered suddenly. "Whatever you need, I'll learn. Physical therapy, home modifications, advocacy, will figure this out together." Her immediate acceptance stunned him. No questions about their wedding. No discussion of how this would change their lives. Just quiet, fierce determination. "Zara, you don't understand what this means. The wedding, our future plans. Our future plans haven't changed," she interrupted, moving back to his bedside. "Just the logistics." As she gently took his hand, Kwame felt a stab of something he hadn't expected: shame. Her fingers were steady, professional, but there was nothing clinical about the way she looked at him. This wasn't pity. This was the same look she'd given him 5 years ago when she'd found him coding furiously in that cramped Kibera internet cafe, determined to build something bigger than his circumstances. "I need to make some calls," she said, already reaching for her phone. "Dr. Peterson at Kenyatta specializes in spinal injuries, and there's a rehabilitation center in Germany that's had incredible success with." "Zara, wait." Panic crept into Kwame's voice. The web of lies was already becoming more complex than he'd anticipated. "I don't want to be anyone's project." Her eyes flashed with something dangerous. "Project? Is that what you think this is?" Before he could respond, a knock interrupted them. Dr. Samuel Kapradik, the one real doctor involved in the charade, entered with a grim expression that Kwame had paid him handsomely to perfect. "I'm sorry to interrupt, but we need to discuss the next steps. The insurance company is asking questions about the accident. They're sending an investigator." Kwame's blood went cold. He hadn't anticipated insurance complications. His eyes met Zara's, and for a moment, he wondered if she could see right through him. "What kind of questions?" Zara asked, her medical training making her naturally suspicious. Dr. Kaprotic glanced nervously between them. They want to know why Mr. Asani refused the MRI, and why he insisted on being treated here instead of being airlifted to South Africa or Europe for specialized care. The room fell silent except for the steady beep of monitoring equipment. Kwame could feel Zara's analytical mind working, processing the information like she would any complex medical case. What will Zara discover about the suspicious accident? Will her medical expertise expose Kwame's lies before he learns the truth about her love? Don't miss the next chapter to find out. Run the blood work again. Dr. Zara Mwangi's voice cut through the pre-dawn quiet of Kenyatta Hospital's neurology wing like a scalpel. She'd been there all night, poring over Kwame's fabricated medical files, and something wasn't adding up. Subscribe now to see how a brilliant doctor's love might uncover a billionaire's biggest lie. Doctor, it's 5 a.m. Her intern protested wearily. The results came back normal 12 hours ago. Normal doesn't make sense with complete spinal cord transection at T12. Zara snapped, her exhaustion making her sharp. His reflexes, his muscle tone. Something's wrong with this picture. She hadn't slept since receiving that devastating phone call about Kwame's accident. Instead, she'd thrown herself into research mode, calling specialists in 3 countries and reading every paper on acute spinal trauma she could find. Love might have brought her here, but science would guide her next steps. Her phone buzzed with a text from her sister, Wanjiku. How's the billionaire boyfriend? Still planning to play nursemaid to a cripple. Zara's hand tightened around the device until her knuckles went white. The word cripple made her stomach churn with rage. She'd heard whispers in the hospital corridors, staff wondering if she'd stick around now that her meal ticket was damaged goods. The assumption that she was some gold-digging social climber made her want to scream. Doctor, her intern's worried voice broke through her fury. Should I page Dr. Peterson about the case? No, Zara said quickly. Something held her back from bringing in her mentor just yet. An instinct she couldn't name. I want to handle this personally first. Back at Nairobi Hospital, she found Kwame awake, staring out the window at the city skyline. The morning light made him look vulnerable in a way that tugged at her heart, even as her medical mind cataloged inconsistencies. You came back, he said softly. I never left. I just want to get some resources. She pulled up a chair beside his bed, studying his face. Kwame, I need to ask you some technical questions about the accident. She watched his jaw tighten almost imperceptibly. There, a micro-expression that didn't fit with someone processing genuine trauma. The impact point, she continued, pulling out a tablet with spinal diagrams. Show me exactly where you hit the ground when you fell from the construction scaffolding. The story was that he'd been inspecting his new tech campus construction site when scaffolding collapsed. But Zara had driven past that site yesterday. It was nowhere near completion, barely more than foundation work. It happened so fast, Kwame stammered. I hit the concrete, felt this sharp pain, then nothing. Nothing below T12. Nothing. Zara nodded, making notes. But her fingers were also discreetly checking his leg positioning, watching for involuntary responses. When she accidentally dropped her pen near his feet, she caught the slightest twitch in his left ankle. Her heart began to pound, but she kept her expression neutral. Years of surgical training had taught her to control her reactions under pressure. The insurance investigator called me this morning, she said casually, watching his face. Margaret Chabet from Jubilee Insurance. She wants to interview both of us about the accident details. Kwame's face went ashen. Why would they need to talk to you? Because I'm listed as your emergency medical contact and next of kin. Standard procedure for claims over 50 million shillings. Zara leaned forward. Kwame, is there something about this accident you haven't told me? The silence stretched between them like a live wire. Outside, Nairobi was waking up. Matatas honking, vendors setting up their stalls. The normal rhythm of a city that had no idea a billionaire's carefully constructed lie was beginning to unravel. There's nothing to tell, Kwame said finally, but his voice lacked conviction. Zara's phone buzzed with an urgent message from Dr. Kaprotic. Need to see you immediately. Private matter regarding patient Asani. I have to step out, she said, standing. But Kwame, I want you to know something. Whatever's going on, whatever you're afraid to tell me, it won't change how I feel about you. As she walked toward the door, she heard him whisper, "You don't understand what you're saying." She turned back, and for a moment, their eyes locked. In that instant, she saw not the confident billionaire she'd fallen in love with, but a scared man trapped in a web of his own making. "Try me," she said softly. Dr. Kaprotic was waiting in his office, perspiration beading on his forehead despite the air conditioning. When Zara entered, he immediately locked the door behind her. "We have a problem," he said without preamble. "The insurance investigator isn't just routine." Margaret Chabet used to work for the Criminal Investigation Department. She specifically requested the original accident scene photos and witness statements. So, that's standard for a large claim. "Zara," Dr. Kaprotic's voice dropped to a whisper. "What if I told you there were no witnesses? What if the accident scene was staged?" The words hit her like a physical blow. The room seemed to tilt, and she gripped the back of a chair for support. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying your fiancé paid me $500,000 to falsify his medical records. The accident never happened. There's nothing wrong with his spine." The betrayal felt like ice water in her veins. Every sleepless hour she'd spent researching treatments, every call to specialists, every moment she'd agonized over their future together, all based on a lie. "Why?" she managed to whisper. "He said he needed to know if you'd love him without his money. Some kind of test." Rage exploded through her chest like a detonation. But before she could respond, Dr. Kaprotic held up his hand. "There's more. Margaret Chabet just called. She's on her way here now, and she's bringing a fraud investigator from the insurance company. If they expose this, Kwame doesn't just lose his claim, he goes to prison for insurance fraud." Zara's mind raced through the implications. Prison would destroy everything Kwame had built, every job he'd created, every scholarship his foundation provided to kids from slums like where he'd grown up. "How long do we have?" she asked. 20 minutes. Maybe less. Will Zara expose the man who betrayed her trust? Or will she sacrifice everything to save him from his own lies? The investigator is almost here. Find out what happens next. "Mr. Asani, this is Margaret Chabet from Jubilee Insurance." The woman who walked into Kwame's hospital room looked nothing like the bureaucratic paper pusher he'd expected. Margaret Chabet moved with the predatory grace of someone who'd spent years hunting down lies for a living. Her sharp eyes swept the room, cataloging every detail. "Hit that notification bell. This investigation is about to expose everything." Beside his bed, Zara stood frozen, still processing Dr. Kaprotic's devastating revelation 20 minutes earlier. Kwame could see the war playing out on her face. Love battling betrayal, loyalty fighting rage. "Ms. Chabet," Kwame managed, trying to project the confidence that had built his empire. "I wasn't expecting anyone today." "I'm sure you weren't." Margaret's smile was razor-sharp. Fraud investigations rarely accommodate the suspect's schedule. The word fraud hung in the air like a toxic cloud. Kwame felt his carefully constructed world begin to crumble. Behind Margaret, a thin man in an expensive suit took notes on everything. The room layout, the medical equipment, even the flowers Zara had brought yesterday. "This is Detective Inspector John Mwangi from the CD," Margaret continued. "We're investigating some irregularities in your accident claim." Kwame's blood went cold. Criminal Investigation Department meant this was no longer just about money. This was about prison time. His eyes darted to Zara, desperate for some sign that she wouldn't expose him. But her face had become a mask of professional neutrality. "What kind of irregularities?" Zara asked, stepping forward. Her voice was steady, giving nothing away. "Well, Dr. Mwangi, yes, I know who you are. We've had some interesting conversations with the construction crew, supposedly working on Mr. Asani's tech campus." Margaret pulled out a tablet, swiping to reveal photos. "Here's the site on the day of the alleged accident. Notice anything unusual?" Kwame's heart hammered against his ribs. The photos showed exactly what Zara had seen. Bare foundation work, no scaffolding, no crew. "Construction schedules change," he said weakly. "Indeed they do. But here's what's fascinating. Your own project manager, James Mutiso, was in Mombasa that entire week for his daughter's wedding. The whole crew was given time off. Margaret's eyes glittered with predatory satisfaction. "So who exactly saw you fall, Mr. Asani?" The room fell silent, except for the mechanical beeping of monitors. Kwame could feel sweat beading on his forehead despite the air conditioning. Everything was unraveling faster than he could think. "Perhaps," Zara said suddenly, "we should discuss this with his legal representation present." Margaret's eyebrows rose. Interesting. Most loving fiancés would be demanding answers, not lawyering up. Unless... She looked between them with shrewd calculation. "Unless you already know something about this alleged accident, Doctor." Kwame watched in horror as the investigator's focus shifted to Zara. His deception was bad enough, but dragging her into this nightmare was unconscionable. "I know my fiancé was critically injured and is facing a devastating spinal cord injury," Zara said firmly. "Everything else is just paperwork." "Is it?" Detective Inspector Mwangi spoke for the first time, his voice like gravel. "Because your medical colleague, Dr. Kapradik, seemed very nervous when we questioned him this morning. Almost like he was hiding something." Kwame's world lurched. If Kapradik cracked under pressure, everything would come out. The fake medical records, the bribed officials, the elaborate staging of the entire accident scene. "I think you should leave," Zara said, moving protectively between the investigators and Kwame's bed. "My fiancé is recovering from major trauma, and this interrogation is completely inappropriate." Margaret smiled coldly. "Actually, Doctor, as a medical professional, you might be interested to know that we've requested an independent medical evaluation. Dr. Sarah Peterson from Kenyatta Hospital will be here within the hour to conduct her own spinal assessment." Kwame's blood turned to ice. Dr. Peterson was Zara's mentor, one of East Africa's most respected neurologists. She would spot a fake spinal injury in minutes. "That won't be necessary," he said quickly. "I'm satisfied with my current treatment." "I'm afraid it's not optional, Mr. Asani." "Court order." Margaret held up an official document. "Any attempt to refuse will result in immediate arrest for insurance fraud." The walls were closing in from every direction. Kwame's mind raced through possible escape routes, but each path led to the same conclusion: exposure and disgrace. His tech empire, built from nothing in the slums of Kibera, would crumble. Worse, he'd drag Zara down with him. "There's something else," Detective Inspector Mwangi said, consulting his notes. "We've discovered some interesting financial transactions. Large cash payments to hospital staff, unusual transfers to acting agencies, all traced back to your accounts." Zara's sharp intake of breath was audible. When Kwame looked at her, he saw the exact moment she realized the full scope of his deception. It wasn't just the fake injury. It was a conspiracy involving dozens of people. "How many people did you pay?" she whispered, her professional composure finally cracking. Before Kwame could answer, Margaret's radio crackled to life. "Ma'am, we have Dr. Peterson at the front desk. She's ready to begin the evaluation." "Excellent. Send her up immediately." As Margaret spoke, Kwame caught Zara's eye. In that moment, he saw something that terrified him more than prison, more than losing his fortune, more than public humiliation. He saw the death of her trust, the end of her love, the destruction of the one genuine relationship in his carefully constructed life. "Zara," he whispered desperately, "let me explain." "Explain what?" Her voice was barely controlled fury. "Explain how you made me grieve for a future that was never threatened. Explain how you let me research treatments for a condition you don't have. Explain how you turned our love into some sick psychological experiment." The elevator dinged in the hallway, Dr. Peterson arriving to expose everything. Margaret Chabet smiled with grim satisfaction, while Detective Inspector Mwangi prepared his handcuffs. But as the sound of approaching footsteps echoed down the corridor, Zara did something that shocked everyone in the room. She locked the door. What is Zara planning? Will she help Kwame escape, or make him face the consequences? Dr. Peterson is seconds away from exposing everything. Don't miss what happens next. "Dr. Mwangi, open this door immediately." Margaret Chabet's voice thundered through the locked hospital room door as she pounded against the steel. Inside, Zara stood with her back pressed against the barrier, her mind racing through impossible calculations. Smash that like button if you're ready for the most shocking twist yet. Zara, what are you doing? Kwame stared at her in disbelief. Seconds ago, she'd been radiating fury at his betrayal. Now she was literally standing between him and justice. Buying us time, she said grimly. Because when Dr. Peterson examines you, this charade ends. And when it ends, you don't just lose your freedom. You lose everything you've built. Through the door, they could hear Margaret coordinating with hospital security. Get maintenance up here with master keys. Now, Kwame struggled to sit up straighter in bed, the irony not lost on him that his fake paralysis was making this conversation more awkward than it needed to be. Zara, you can't get involved in this. Your medical license, your career, my career. She laughed bitterly. You think I care about my career when the man I love is about to be destroyed by his own stupidity? The word love hit him like a physical blow. After everything, the lies, the deception, the elaborate charade, she still loved him. But the knowledge brought no relief, only deeper shame. You heard what they said about the payments, the conspiracy. This isn't just insurance fraud anymore. This is criminal conspiracy involving dozens of people. Zara began pacing the small room like a caged lioness. Do you understand what that means in Kenyan law? 20 years minimum, Kwame said quietly. I researched it before I started this insane plan. 20 years. She stopped pacing and stared at him. You were willing to risk 20 years in prison to test whether I loved you for your money? The banging on the door intensified, accompanied by the jingle of keys. Security had arrived. I had to know, Kwame said desperately. After what your sister said at the engagement party, after overhearing the conversations about my wealth, I had to know if any of it was real. So instead of talking to me like an adult, like a partner, you created an elaborate lie that could destroy both our lives. Dr. Mwangi, a new voice joined the chorus outside. Dr. Peterson herself. I know you're in there. This behavior is completely unprofessional. Zara closed her eyes, taking a deep breath. When she opened them, her expression had shifted into something Kwame had never seen before. Cold, calculating determination. Here's what's going to happen, she said, pulling out her phone. I'm calling my father. Kwame's stomach dropped. Zara's father was Justice Samuel Mwangi, one of Kenya's most respected high court judges. Bringing him into this mess would only make things worse. Zara, no. Don't drag your family into this. My family. She dialed with sharp, angry movements. You dragged my family into this the moment you decided to test me like a lab rat. The call connected immediately. Daddy? It's Zara. I need you to get to Nairobi Hospital immediately. VIP wing, room 302. And Daddy, bring Michael Karanja. Michael Karanja was Kenya's most expensive criminal defense attorney. The kind of lawyer who could make murder charges disappear with the right connections and enough money. What are you telling him? Kwame asked frantically. The truth. That my fiancé is an idiot who's about to go to prison for fraud, and that his stupidity is about to destroy everything his foundation does for kids in Kibera. The keys rattled in the lock. They had seconds before the door opened. But first, Zara said, moving to his bedside with sudden purpose, we're going to give them something else to think about. Before Kwame could ask what she meant, Zara did something that shocked him to his core. She grabbed the forced stand and yanked it toward herself, letting the metal corner strike her shoulder with enough force to leave a visible bruise. Zara, what are you doing? Making this look like what it needs to look like, she said through gritted teeth, positioning herself as if she'd been struck during a struggle. When they come through that door, you were trying to confess, and I was trying to stop you because I was afraid of what the stress would do to your condition. The door burst open with Margaret Chabet in the lead, followed by Detective Inspector Mwangi, hospital security, and Dr. Peterson. They all stopped short at the scene before them. Zara apparently injured, Kwame reaching toward her in obvious distress. What happened here? Dr. Peterson demanded, immediately moving to examine Zara's shoulder. He was trying to get out of bed, Zara said, allowing pain to color her voice. Kept saying he had to tell you something, had to confess to something. I was trying to keep him calm, and he knocked over the 4 stand, trying to reach me. Margaret's eyes narrowed with suspicion. Confess to what, exactly? Kwame opened his mouth, but Zara cut him off. He's been having panic attacks about the accident. Guilt about surviving when his construction foreman didn't. It was a masterful lie, creating a plausible reason for his distressed behavior, while introducing a fictional victim that would muddy the investigative waters. What construction foreman? Detective Inspector Mwangi demanded. James Mutiso, Zara said without missing a beat. Kwame blames himself because James died trying to save him when the scaffolding collapsed. The lie was so audacious, so perfectly delivered, that even Margaret seemed momentarily confused. But Kwame could see the wheels turning behind her sharp eyes. Interesting story, Doctor. Except James Mutiso is very much alive. We interviewed him this morning in Mombasa. The room fell silent except for the steady beeping of medical equipment. Zara's elaborate lie crumbled in real time, leaving them in an even worse position than before. I think, Dr. Peterson said quietly, it's time for that medical evaluation. As she approached the bed with her examination tools, Kwame realized they were out of time, out of options, and out of lies. In minutes, his fake paralysis would be exposed, and both he and Zara would face the consequences of their desperate gambit. But just as Dr. Peterson reached for his leg to test his reflexes, the hospital room's emergency alarm began blaring, and the lights flickered to emergency power. Someone had pulled the fire alarm. Who pulled the fire alarm? Is this Kwame's salvation or the beginning of an even bigger disaster? The evacuation is starting now. Don't miss the chaos that's about to unfold. All patients must evacuate immediately. The fire alarm's piercing wail cut through the hospital room as emergency lights bathed everything in hellish red. Through the window, Kwame could see smoke billowing from the hospital's east wing. This wasn't a drill. Subscribe and hit that bell. This evacuation is about to change everything. Move, move, move. Hospital staff flooded the corridors outside, their voices mixing with the chaos of rolling gurneys and shouting nurses. Dr. Peterson abandoned her examination, her medical training taking over as she assessed the immediate danger. We need to get him to the evacuation point, she called over the alarm, reaching for Kwame's wheelchair. I'll handle it, Zara said quickly, grabbing the chair first. As she positioned it beside his bed, she whispered urgently in his ear, "This is our only chance. Play along." Margaret Chabet was arguing with Detective Inspector Mwangi near the door, both of them frustrated by the interrupted investigation. "We can't let him leave our sight," Margaret shouted over the noise. "Ma'am, there's a real fire." A security guard burst into the room. "The East Wing is fully involved. We have maybe 10 minutes before it reaches this floor." Through the smoke-hazed window, Kwame could see the orange glow intensifying. Whatever was happening, it was genuinely dangerous. As Zara helped him transfer to the wheelchair, maintaining his paralysis charade, he caught sight of something that made his blood freeze. Dr. Kaprotic was in the hallway, talking animatedly with a man in an expensive suit, someone who definitely wasn't hospital staff. The doctor looked panicked, gesticulating wildly as he spoke. "Zara," Kwame whispered as she pushed his wheelchair toward the door. "Kaprotic is talking to someone. This might not be an accident." She followed his gaze, and her face went pale. "Oh God, do you think he started the fire to destroy the evidence?" Kwame finished her thought grimly. "It's possible. If the medical records burn, there's no proof of fraud." The corridor was chaos. Patients in wheelchairs and on gurneys, staff shouting orders, family members searching frantically for loved ones. In the confusion, Zara navigated Kwame's wheelchair toward the elevator bank. "Dr. Mwangi," Margaret Chabet's voice cut through the noise. "Where do you think you're going?" Following evacuation protocol, Zara called back without stopping. "My patient needs immediate medical supervision during transport." But Margaret was persistent, fighting through the crowd to keep up with them. "Your patient is under investigation for insurance fraud. Your investigation can wait until we're not in danger of burning to death." Zara snapped, reaching the elevator just as the doors opened. Inside were 3 other patients and a nurse, but no room for Margaret and the detective. As the doors began to close, Margaret lunged forward, trying to force them open. "Stop this elevator!" The doors sealed shut, cutting off her voice. But instead of going down to the evacuation floors, Zara hit the button for the basement. "The basement? Zara, what are you doing?" "Getting us away from the fire and the investigators," she said grimly. "There's a service exit that leads to the parking garage. My car is there. You're helping me escape?" The elevator descended in tense silence before she answered. "I'm helping the man I love avoid 20 years in prison for being an idiot." When the doors opened on the basement level, the air was thick with smoke and the sound of the fire alarm was even more deafening. Emergency lighting cast eerie shadows as they moved through the hospital's underground corridors. "This way," Zara said, pushing his wheelchair toward a service corridor she knew from her residency years. "But Kwame, when we get out of here, you and I are going to have a very long conversation about trust, lies, and what real love actually means." They emerged into the parking garage just as the first fire trucks were arriving outside. The smoke was thicker here, and Kwame could hear the distant sound of glass breaking as the fire spread. "There!" Zara pointed to her Toyota Land Cruiser parked in the doctor section. "Can you walk to the car? Or do we need to maintain this charade a little longer?" The question hung between them like a test. After everything that had happened, she was still giving him the choice to trust her with the truth. "I can walk," he said quietly, standing up from the wheelchair on shaky legs. "Zara, I'm so sorry. For all of it. Save the apologies for later," she said, but there was softness in her voice now. "Right now we need to figure out how to keep you out of prison and salvage what's left of our relationship." As they reached her car, Kwame's phone buzzed with an incoming call. The caller ID made his stomach drop. "James Mutiso, construction manager." "Answer it," Zara said, seeing his expression. On speaker, Kwame accepted the call with trembling hands. "James, boss, what the hell is going on?" James's voice was tight with panic. "The police called me in Mombasa, asking about some accident at the construction site. Then someone else called offering me money to lie about being there that day. And now I'm seeing on the news that the hospital is on fire." Kwame and Zara exchanged glances. Someone else was offering James money to lie. Someone who wasn't Kwame. "James, who called you about lying?" "I don't know, but they knew things, boss. Personal things about my family, my daughter's wedding. They said if I didn't cooperate, there would be consequences." The implication hit them both at the same time. This wasn't just about Kwame's insurance fraud anymore. Someone else was involved, someone with enough reach to threaten witnesses and possibly burn down a hospital. "James, get your family somewhere safe. Right now. Don't go home. Don't trust anyone. I'll explain everything later, but you're all in danger." As Kwame ended the call, Zara started the engine with grim determination. "We're not just running from the police anymore, are we?" "No," Kwame said, watching flames begin to lick at the hospital's windows above them. "We're running from someone who's willing to burn down a building to cover their tracks. But I have no idea who or why." As they drove out of the parking garage into the smoky Nairobi night, neither of them noticed the black SUV that began following them at a discreet distance. Who's following them? Why would someone burn down a hospital to hide Kwame's secret? The chase is just beginning. Don't miss what happens. "We're being followed." Zara's voice was steady, but Kwame could see her white-knuckled grip on the steering wheel as she navigated through Nairobi's evening traffic. In the side mirror, the black SUV maintained its distance, professional and patient. Like this video if you're ready to discover who's really pulling the strings. "Are you sure?" Kwame twisted to look back, his pretense of paralysis finally abandoned. "Could be coincidence. I've made 4 random turns in the last 10 minutes. They've matched everyone." Zara accelerated through a yellow light, watching as the SUV ran the red to keep up. Professional tail job. This isn't some insurance investigator. Kwame's phone buzzed with an unknown number. Against his better judgment, he answered. "Mr. Asante." The voice was electronically distorted, impossible to identify. "You've caused quite a lot of trouble today." "Who is this?" "Someone who's been cleaning up your messes before you even knew you'd made them." "The hospital fire, the witness intimidation, the destruction of evidence, all to protect you. You should be grateful. Zara swerved into the right lane, trying to lose their tail in the maze of Matata buses around the Westlands roundabout. The SUV stayed with them, relentless. I didn't ask for your help, Kwame said into the phone, his voice hard. No, but you needed it. Do you think your little insurance fraud was the only crime being investigated? Your construction company has been laundering money for some very dangerous people, Mr. Asani. People who don't appreciate attention from investigators. The words hit Kwame like a sledgehammer. That's impossible. I oversee every contract personally. Do you? Because your CFO, David Kamau, has been very creative with the books. Ghost employees, inflated material costs, phantom construction projects. Your tech empire has been washing drug money through its construction arm for 3 years. Zara's eyes met his in the rearview mirror, wide with shock. If this was true, then his entire business empire was built on blood money. You're lying, Kwame said, but doubt was creeping into his voice. David had been pushing for more construction projects lately, insisting they expand faster than Kwame thought prudent. Check your bank accounts, Mr. Asani. The offshore transfers, the unexplained bonuses. Your CFO has been very generous with money that isn't his to give. Kwame frantically pulled up his banking app, his fingers shaking as he navigated to his business accounts. What he saw made his stomach lurch. Transfers he'd never authorized, bonuses he'd never approved, payments to companies he'd never heard of. Dear God, he whispered. The insurance investigation wasn't about your fake accident, the voice continued. It was cover for a larger financial crimes investigation. Margaret Chabet isn't just an insurance investigator. She's working with the Asset Recovery Agency. They've been tracking the money laundering operation for months. The SUV suddenly accelerated, pulling alongside their car. Through the tinted windows, Kwame could see armed figures inside. What do you want? He demanded into the phone. Your cooperation. Drive to the coordinates I'm texting you. Come alone, and we'll discuss how to clean up this mess without you and Dr. Mwangi ending up like your friend James Mutiso. The line went dead. Immediately, Kwame's phone buzzed with a text from James. Boss, they took my family. Please help us. They say you know what they want. Zara saw his face in the mirror and floored the accelerator. What do they say? They have James's family. And apparently my entire business is a money laundering operation that I knew nothing about. Kwame's voice cracked with the weight of it all. Zara, we need to go to the police. Go to the police? We just escaped from the police. And now you want to tell them your business is washing drug money. The SUV was keeping pace with them now, and Kwame could see they were being herded toward the industrial district near Jomo Kenyatta Airport. Fewer witnesses, more places to disappear someone permanently. There's something else, Zara said grimly, checking her mirrors. I just got a text from Dr. Peterson. The fire didn't destroy the medical records like whoever said it hoped. The backup servers were in a different building. That's good news, isn't it? Means the fraud evidence still exists. It means Margaret Chabet still has everything she needs to prosecute you. But it also means someone burned down half a hospital for nothing. Zara's voice turned cold. Someone who doesn't know hospital IT protocols very well. Kwame's phone rang again, this time with David Kamau's name on the caller ID. His CFO, calling at the exact moment when everything was falling apart. Don't answer it, Zara said quickly. But Kwame was already accepting the call. David, where are you? Kwame, thank God. Are you safe? I heard about the hospital, the fire, the investigation. David's voice sounded genuinely concerned, but now Kwame was listening for deception in every word. I'm fine. David, I need to ask you about some financial irregularities. Transfers I don't remember authorizing. There was a pause that lasted a heartbeat too long. What kind of transfers? Offshore accounts. Phantom employees. Construction contracts that don't exist. Another pause. Kwame, where are you right now? I can explain everything, but not over the phone. Meet me at the office. The office that might be under surveillance by financial crimes investigators? What are you talking about? Kwame, you're scaring me. What investigators? But even as David spoke, Kwame could hear other voices in the background. Voices that sounded like they were coordinating something. and one of them was the electronically distorted voice from the earlier call, now clear and unmasked. It was David Kamau who had been threatening them all along. "You son of a bitch," Kwame whispered into the phone. "You've been using my company to launder drug money." The pretense dropped from David's voice like a discarded mask. "Not just drug money, old friend. Arms dealing, human trafficking, political corruption. Your clean tech company reputation was perfect cover. Who suspects a billionaire philanthropist from slums? You destroyed everything I built. I made you richer than you ever imagined. Those bonuses, those expansion funds, you enjoyed spending the money. Don't pretend you didn't know where it came from." Rage exploded through Kwame's chest like molten metal. "I never knowingly took dirty money. Ignorance isn't a defense in court, but cooperation might be. Drive to the warehouse district. Lone Tree Road. You know the building. We bought it last year for future expansion." The line went dead, just as Zara swerved to avoid a motorcycle taxi. The SUV was still beside them, no longer pretending to be subtle. "Zara, I need you to do something for me," Kwame said urgently. "I need you to call your father, tell him everything, and then drive straight to the nearest police station." "What? No, I'm not leaving you to face this alone. You have to, because if David is willing to burn down a hospital and kidnap families, he won't hesitate to kill us both. And I can't live with your death on my conscience too." As they approached the turnoff to Lone Tree Road, Zara made a decision that surprised them both. Instead of turning toward the warehouse district, she gunned the engine and headed straight for the main highway out of Nairobi. "Where are you going?" "Somewhere they can't follow us with a whole convoy. Somewhere we can figure out how to save James's family and take down your psychotic CFO." In the distance behind them, Kwame could see multiple vehicles joining the chase. Whatever David Kamau was involved in, it was bigger and more dangerous than either of them had imagined. Will they escape the convoy? Can they save James's family? And how deep does the conspiracy go? The chase is intensifying. Don't miss the explosive confrontation ahead. There's nowhere left to run. David Kamau's voice echoed through the abandoned warehouse as Kwame pushed open the rusted metal door. Despite Zura's desperate highway escape attempt, they'd been systematically herded back to this industrial hellscape on the outskirts of Nairobi. Smash that subscribe button. This confrontation will blow your mind. The warehouse was eerily quiet except for the distant hum of airport traffic. Shafts of late afternoon sunlight cut through broken skylights, illuminating dust motes that danced like ghosts in the stale air. "I said come alone," David's voice called from the shadows. "And I said go to hell," Kwame replied, keeping Zara close behind him. "Where's James and his family?" A spotlight suddenly blazed to life, temporarily blinding them both. As their eyes adjusted, they could see David standing on a catwalk 20 feet above, flanked by armed men in tactical gear. Safe. For now. David's expensive suit was incongruous in the industrial setting, like a predator dressed for a board meeting. But their continued safety depends entirely on your cooperation. "What do you want, David? You've already destroyed my company, my reputation, my life. What more is there? Your signature on a few documents. Transfer of assets, authorization of payments, that sort of thing. Nothing too complicated for a tech genius." Beside him, Zara tensed. "He wants you to legitimize all the money laundering retroactively. Make it look like you were a willing participant from the beginning." "Very good, Dr. Mwangi, though I'm surprised you're still here." Most women would have run when they discovered their billionaire fiancé was both a fraud and a money launderer. Most women don't love idiots who need saving from their own stupidity, Zara shot back. David laughed, but there was no humor in it. "Love? How touching. I suppose it doesn't matter that your beloved Kwame has been living off blood money for 3 years? That every scholarship his foundation gave to slum kids was paid for with drug profits?" The words hit Kwame like physical blows. Every good thing he'd tried to do, every life he'd helped improve, all of it tainted by association with David's crimes. "I never knew," he said quietly. "Of course you didn't. You were too busy playing the noble philanthropist to ask hard questions about exponential profit growth. Did you really think your little internet cafe empire could generate that kind of return legitimately? Movement in the shadows caught Kwame's eye. More figures emerging from behind shipping containers, surrounding them at ground level. They were completely trapped. The documents, Kwame. Sign them, and everyone goes home safely. And if I refuse? David gestured to one of his men, who dragged a bound figure into the light. James Mutiso, bruised and bloodied, but alive. His eyes met Kwame's with desperate plea. "Boss," James croaked through swollen lips. "Don't sign anything. They're going to kill us anyway." One of David's men struck James across the face with a rifle, but dropping him to the concrete floor. "Now, that was unnecessary," David called down calmly. "James, you should know better than to discourage cooperation." Zara stepped forward, her medical training overriding fear. "Let me examine him. He could have internal bleeding." "How noble. But I'm afraid medical care will have to wait until we conclude our business." Kwame's phone buzzed with an incoming text. Glancing down, he saw a message from an unknown number. "Window. North wall. 30 seconds. He looked up at the north wall and spotted a broken window about 15 feet off the ground. As he watched, a dark figure appeared briefly in the opening before disappearing again. "David, I'll sign your documents," Kwame said loudly, hoping to buy time. "But I want proof that James's family is safe first." "Proof?" David seemed amused. "You're hardly in a position to make demands." "Actually, I think he is." The new voice came from behind David on the catwalk. Margaret Chabet emerged from the shadows, her pistol trained on David's head. "Margaret," David's confident demeanor cracked. "How did you track you here? GPS on your phone, financial surveillance on your accounts, and cooperation from a very helpful Dr. Kaprotic, who decided confession was better than conspiracy charges." More figures emerged from concealment around the warehouse, police tactical units moving with precision born of careful planning. "This is Asset Recovery Agency. Drop your weapons." The warehouse erupted into chaos. David's men opened fire, sparks flying as bullets ricocheted off metal surfaces. Margaret tackled David, wrestling for control of her weapon as they crashed into machinery on the catwalk. "Moo!" Zara shouted, grabbing Kwame's arm and pulling him toward James's prone form. They needed to get him to safety before the crossfire intensified. But as they reached James, one of David's men swung his rifle toward them. Kwame threw himself over both Zara and James as bullets shredded the air above their heads. "The containers!" Zara pointed to a row of shipping containers that could provide cover. They half-dragged, half-carried James toward the metal barriers as the gunfight raged around them. From the catwalk above, they could hear David screaming, "Kill them all! No witnesses!" A massive explosion rocked the warehouse as someone's bullets found a fuel tank. Flames began licking up the walls, adding deadly urgency to their situation. "Kwame," Margaret's voice cut through the chaos. "The documents. Where are the financial records?" "David's briefcase," Kwame shouted back. "On the catwalk." As police tactical units systematically neutralized David's men, Kwame could see Margaret fighting desperately with David near the burning fuel tank. She was smaller but better trained, gradually gaining the upper hand. Then David pulled a grenade from his jacket. "If I'm going down," he screamed, "I'm taking all the evidence with me." The warehouse had become a hellscape of smoke, flames, and gunfire. James was losing consciousness in Zara's arms, and Margaret was 30 feet away with a madman holding explosives. Everything Kwame had built, everything he'd tried to preserve, was about to be destroyed in one final, apocalyptic moment. But as David pulled the grenade's pin, something unexpected happened. The overhead sprinkler system activated, not with water, but with fire-suppressing foam that instantly obscured visibility throughout the warehouse. In the chaos that followed, Kwame heard Margaret's voice. "Everybody down. Special unit. Execute." Who activated the foam system? Is this the end for David? Or does he have one final card to play? The warehouse is about to explode. Don't miss the heart-stopping conclusion. The grenade rolled across the metal catwalk with a metallic ping that cut through the chaos like a death knell. Margaret Chabet dove sideways just as the device detonated, the explosion ripping through the warehouse's upper level in a ball of orange flame and twisted steel. David Kamau's scream was cut short as the catwalk collapsed, sending him plummeting into the inferno below. Hit that notification bell. You won't believe who survives this explosion. Margaret, Kwame shouted through the fire-suppressing foam that had turned the warehouse into a white, choking hell. The sprinkler system continued pumping chemical suppressant into the air, but flames were already racing up the walls faster than the system could contain them. Here, Margaret's voice came from somewhere in the white void. I'm alive, but trapped under debris. Zara was performing CPR on James, whose breathing had become dangerously shallow. Kwame, I need to get him to a hospital now, or he's going to die. The sound of grinding metal filled the air as part of the roof structure began to sag. Whatever David's explosion had damaged, the building was becoming structurally unsound. Police units, evacuate immediately. A voice crackled over radio communications. Building collapse imminent. Through the foam and smoke, Kwame could see tactical officers moving toward the exits, but Margaret was still trapped somewhere in the wreckage of the catwalk. He couldn't leave her to die, not when she'd risked everything to expose David's crimes. Zara, get James out of here. I'm not leaving you. Someone has to get him medical attention, and someone has to help Margaret. Go. For a moment, their eyes met through the chaos, and Kwame saw the same fierce determination that had first attracted him to her 5 years ago in that Kibra internet cafe. You better survive this, she said grimly, then began dragging James toward the nearest exit with strength born of desperation. Kwame fought his way through the foam toward where he'd last heard Margaret's voice. The heat was intensifying, and he could hear more structural supports beginning to fail. Margaret, keep talking. I'm coming. Here, under the stairs. He found her pinned beneath a twisted piece of the catwalk, conscious but bleeding from a head wound. Her left leg was trapped under a steel beam that would require multiple people to lift. The briefcase, she gasped. David's financial records. Did you see where it fell? Are you seriously worried about evidence when we're about to be crushed or burned alive? Those records contain everything. The money laundering network, the drug connections, the corruption. Without them, dozens of criminals walk free. Kwame looked around desperately and spotted the leather briefcase about 20 feet away, partially buried under debris, but apparently intact. I see it, but I can't lift this beam alone. Yes, you can. Margaret's voice was getting weaker. Leverage. Use that piece of rebar as a fulcrum. Working frantically, Kwame positioned a length of rebar under the beam and applied pressure. The metal lifted slightly, enough for Margaret to pull her leg free. But as she moved, more debris showered down from above. The roof's coming down. They scrambled toward the briefcase just as a massive section of ceiling crashed to the floor behind them. The briefcase was heavier than expected, and Kwame realized it contained more than just documents. There were hard drives, USB devices, and what looked like recording equipment. David was recording everything, Margaret explained as they stumbled toward an exit. Insurance against his criminal partners. He never trusted them completely. They emerged from the warehouse just as the entire structure began its final collapse. Fire trucks were arriving, paramedics were working on James, and Zara was arguing with police officers who were trying to prevent her from going back inside for Kwame. But as the warehouse's walls finally gave way in a thunderous roar of metal and concrete, Kwame realized their problems were far from over. A black sedan was parked across the street, and through the windshield, he could see figures watching the destruction with obvious satisfaction. When they spotted him and Margaret emerging alive, the car's engine started. Margaret, he said urgently, I don't think David was the top of the food chain. She followed his gaze to the sedan, her expression hardening. His partners. They're here to clean up loose ends. The sedan began moving toward them, and Kwame could see the barrel of a rifle extending from the passenger window. Everyone down, Margaret shouted, drawing her sidearm. But before the shooters could open fire, police tactical units that had been hidden in the surrounding buildings opened up with automatic weapons. The sedan's windshield exploded in a shower of safety glass, and the vehicle swerved into a concrete barrier. Coordinated operation, Margaret explained as the shooting died down. We've been tracking this money laundering network for months. David was just the operational manager. The real bosses are in Dubai, London, and Johannesburg. So, this isn't over. The immediate threat is. But the investigation will continue. And Kwame. She looked at him seriously. Your cooperation will determine whether you're treated as a victim of David's deception or as a willing participant in money laundering. Zara appeared at his side, soot-stained and exhausted, but radiating relief. James is stable. They're taking him to Kenyatta Hospital. And us. Margaret smiled grimly. You're coming with me for a very long debriefing session. Both of you. There are a lot of questions to answer about your fake paralysis, the hospital fire, and how you knew to run when the investigation started. As they walked toward the police vehicles, Kwame felt the weight of David's briefcase in his hands. Inside were the keys to dismantling an international criminal network, but also evidence that might destroy what remained of his reputation. Zara, he said quietly, after everything that comes out in this investigation, you might not want to be associated with me anymore. She stopped walking and turned to face him. Kwame Asani, you faked a spinal injury to test my love, got involved in international money laundering through stupidity rather than malice, and nearly got us both killed by your psychotic business partner. And you think I'm going to abandon you now? Any reasonable person would. Then I guess it's a good thing I'm not reasonable. She took his free hand. But when this is all over, we're going to have a very serious conversation about trust, communication, and why testing your partner's love is the stupidest thing anyone has ever done. Despite everything, the fire, the shooting, the looming investigation, Kwame felt something he hadn't experienced in months. Hope. But as they reached the police cars, Margaret's radio crackled with an urgent message. Command to team leader. We have a problem. The Dubai connection just went active. They're moving assets and eliminating witnesses. This operation just went international. The money laundering network spans 3 continents, and now they're eliminating witnesses. Will Kwame and Zara survive what's coming next? Don't miss the international manhunt that's about to begin. They killed 3 witnesses in Dubai last night. Margaret Chabet's words hung heavy in the secure conference room at CD headquarters as she slid gruesome crime scene photographs across the metal table. Kwame pushed him away without looking, but the damage was done. These people killed anyone who threatened their operation. Like and subscribe. This international conspiracy is more dangerous than anyone imagined. How do we know they won't come for us next? Zara asked, her medical training helping her examine the photos with clinical detachment even as her face paled. Because, Margaret said grimly, you're going to help us catch them first. It had been 18 hours since the warehouse explosion, and Kwame was beginning to understand the true scope of David Kamau's criminal network. The briefcase they'd recovered contained terabytes of financial data, recorded conversations, and detailed operational plans that painted a picture of corruption spanning 3 continents. This network has been operating for 7 years, Margaret continued, pulling up a complex diagram on the wall monitor. Drug money from South America gets laundered through construction companies in Kenya, then invested in legitimate businesses across East Africa. Your company wasn't their first victim, Kwame, just their most successful. Detective Inspector John Mwangi entered the room, carrying coffee and looking like he hadn't slept. Just got word from Interpol. The London Connection is a private banking firm that handles accounts for half the corrupt politicians in Africa. They're moving money as we speak, try to evacuate their assets before we can freeze them. How much money are we talking about? Kwame asked, though he dreaded the answer. Conservative estimate? $2 billion over 7 years. The number hit like a physical blow. Kwame's legitimate business empire was worth maybe 300 million shillings. The criminals had used his reputation to launder nearly 7 times that amount. There's something else, Margaret said, pulling up a new document. David kept detailed records of everyone who received laundered money, intentionally or not. Your foundation, Kwame, it distributed over 50 million shillings in scholarships over the past 3 years. All of it drug money. Zara's sharp intake of breath was audible. The kids from Kibera, the university students, all those families who got help, were helped with blood money, Kwame finished quietly. Every scholarship, every computer lab, every small business loan, it's all tainted. Which is why, Detective Inspector Mwangi said, we need your help to take down the entire network. Voluntary cooperation now might help when the international courts start prosecuting. Margaret activated a secure video link, and suddenly they were looking at officers in Dubai and London. The reality of the international investigation hit home as Kwame realized this was far bigger than Kenyan law enforcement could handle alone. Mr. Asani, the Dubai officer, spoke with a crisp British accent. We understand you are unaware of the money laundering activities, but your signature appears on dozens of documents authorizing the transfers. Proving your innocence will require full cooperation. What kind of cooperation? We want you to resume normal business operations, the London officer explained. Act as if David's death was tragic, but not suspicious. The network's remaining leaders will try to contact you to ensure continuity of operations. You want me to be bait, Kwame said flatly. We want you to be a concerned business owner trying to understand what happened to his CFO, Margaret corrected. They don't know we recovered David's records. As far as they know, all evidence burned in the warehouse. Zara leaned forward. And what happens when they realize the truth? That's why you'll both be under 24-hour protection, Detective Inspector Mwangi assured them. Plainclothes officers, electronic surveillance, safe house if necessary. Kwame's phone buzzed with an incoming call from an international number. Everyone in the room tensed as they recognized this could be the first contact from the criminal network. Answer it, Margaret whispered. Act natural. Kwame accepted the call. Hello. Mr. Asani, my condolences on the loss of David Kamau. The voice was smooth, cultured, with a slight South African accent. I'm Robert Daniels, from the Dubai office of International Asset Management. David and I worked closely together on your expansion financing. Margaret was frantically typing on her laptop, obviously trying to trace the call and identify the caller. I'm not familiar with your company, Kwame said carefully. That's understandable. David handled all external financing relationships. But with his tragic death, we need to discuss the continuity of several important projects. What kind of projects? Perhaps we can meet in person? I'm flying to Nairobi tomorrow. The usual place. David mentioned you sometimes met at the Fairmont Norfolk Hotel for business discussions. Kwame had never met David at the Fairmont Norfolk, but he played along. Of course. What time? Shall we say 2 p.m. tomorrow? The tattoo bar. I'll be there. The line went dead. Margaret immediately activated her radio. All units, we have confirmation. The network is making contact. I need full surveillance setup at the Fairmont Norfolk Hotel by tomorrow morning. This is insane, Zara said, standing abruptly. You're asking him to meet with international criminals who just killed 3 people in Dubai. We'll have sniper coverage, plainclothes officers throughout the hotel, and electronic surveillance on everything, Detective Inspector Mwangi assured her. And if they realize it's a trap and start shooting? Margaret's expression was grim. Then we improvise. Kwame reached for Zara's hand. It's the only way to end this. If we don't take down the whole network, we'll be looking over our shoulders for the rest of our lives. There's something else you should know, the Dubai officer interjected through the video link. We intercepted communications suggesting the network plans to eliminate all loose ends before shutting down operations. That includes you, Mr. Asandi, and anyone close to you. The words hung in the air like a death sentence. These people weren't just going to disappear. They were going to kill everyone who could testify against them. How long do we have? Zara asked. Based on the pattern in Dubai, maybe 72 hours before they start eliminating witnesses systematically. Margaret stood up, her expression resolute. Then we end this tomorrow. Kwame, you'll wear a wire to the meeting. We'll record everything, get positive identification of the network leadership, and coordinate arrests simultaneously in 3 countries. And if something goes wrong, then you'd better hope that medical degree of yours includes trauma surgery, Margaret told Zara grimly, because bullets don't care about police protection. As they prepared to leave the secure conference room, Kwame realized that everything that had started with his stupid decision to fake paralysis was about to culminate in a potentially deadly confrontation with international criminals. But looking at Zara's determined expression, he knew she'd be right there beside him, no matter how dangerous it got. The only question was whether they'd both survive long enough to have that serious conversation about trust she promised. Will the trap at the Fairmont Norfolk succeed, or are Kwame and Zara walking into certain death? The final confrontation with the International Crime Network is tomorrow. Don't miss the explosive conclusion. He's not coming alone. Margaret's voice crackled through Kwame's nearly invisible earpiece as he sat at a corner table in the Fairmont Norfolk Hotel's tattoo bar, nursing a coffee he was too nervous to drink. Through the colonial-style windows, he could see the lush gardens where he'd proposed to Zara just 6 months ago, back when his biggest worry was whether she truly loved him. Subscribe and hit that bell. This final confrontation will determine everything. How many? He whispered, pretending to check his phone. 3 that we can see. Professional muscle. And Kwame. One of them is carrying a case that could contain anything from money to explosives. Across the elegant bar, other patrons sipped afternoon tea and conducted business meetings, oblivious to the deadly game playing out around them. Margaret's team had done an excellent job blending in. He'd spotted at least 6 undercover officers posing as tourists and business people. Target approaching, Margaret's voice warned. Remember, keep him talking. We need him to incriminate himself on tape. Robert Daniels was not what Kwame had expected. Instead of a menacing criminal mastermind, he looked like any successful international businessman. Expensive suit, confident bearing, the kind of man who belonged in 5-star hotels. Only his eyes gave him away, cold and calculating as they swept the room for threats. Mr. Asani, Daniels extended his hand with a warm smile that never reached his eyes. Thank you for meeting on such short notice. Of course, though I have to admit, I'm still not entirely clear on your relationship with David. David was our operational manager for East Africa, a very talented man who helped us move significant assets through the region. Daniels signaled the waiter for whiskey, completely at ease. His death is a substantial loss to our organization. Your organization? International Asset Management. We specialize in helping high-net-worth individuals and corporations move money efficiently across international borders. The euphemism was so polite that it almost masked the criminal activity being described. Kwame's hidden microphone was recording every word, but he needed more specific admissions. David mentioned some of our projects were being used for special financing arrangements. Indeed, your construction company has been invaluable for our South American clients who needed to invest in legitimate African enterprises. The returns have been exceptional for everyone involved. South American clients? Let's just say they're in the agricultural export business. Daniel's smile was razor-sharp. Very profitable, though sometimes they need help integrating their proceeds into the formal economy. It was the closest thing to a confession they were likely to get. Drug dealers using Kwame's construction company to launder cocaine money. Margaret's team would have enough to prosecute based on that admission alone. But then Daniels leaned forward, his voice dropping to a whisper. Of course, with David's unfortunate death, we need to discuss the future of our arrangement. What kind of future? Continuity, Mr. Asani. Our clients have invested heavily in East African operations. They expect their investments to remain secure and profitable. Through his earpiece, Kwame could hear Margaret coordinating with international law enforcement. All units, we have confession on tape. Prepare for coordinated arrests in 3, 2. But before Margaret could give the final order, Daniel's expression suddenly shifted. The businesslike facade dropped away, replaced by predatory alertness. You know, Mr. Asani, there's something fascinating about your recent medical emergency. Kwame's blood went cold. My accident. Spinal cord injury, wasn't it? Terrible thing. Though I have to wonder, how does a man with complete paralysis below T12 unconsciously shift his weight when he's nervous? The trap had been reversed. Somehow, Daniels knew about the fake paralysis, which meant he also knew about the police investigation. I don't know what you mean. Of course you don't. Daniels finished his whiskey and stood smoothly. Give my regards to Dr. Mwangi. I understand she's quite devoted to you, even when you lie to her. Before Kwame could respond, Daniels was walking toward the exit with casual confidence. But as he moved, Kwame noticed other patrons beginning to stand as well. Not Margaret's officers, but Daniel's people who had been hiding in plain sight. Margaret, he whispered urgently. It's a trap. They knew we were coming. All units move now. Margaret's voice exploded through his earpiece. Suspect is fleeing. The elegant hotel bar erupted into chaos as undercover officers revealed themselves, drawing weapons and shouting commands. Hotel guests screamed and dove for cover as Daniels' men pulled guns and began firing. But Daniels himself had vanished, seemingly disappeared into the hotel's maze of corridors and exits. Kwame threw himself behind the bar as bullets shattered expensive glassware above his head. Through the chaos, he could hear Margaret coordinating pursuit, but he knew with sinking certainty that the international criminal had outplayed them. His phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. The lovely Dr. Mwangi sends her regards. She's safe for now, but that could change quickly. Come alone to the coordinates I'm sending, or she dies like the witnesses in Dubai. The message was accompanied by a photo that made Kwame's world stop. Zara bound and blindfolded in what looked like a shipping container. They had her. Despite all of Margaret's protection, all the surveillance, all the careful planning, the criminals had captured the woman he loved. Margaret, he shouted over the continuing gunfire. They have Zara. But Margaret was across the room, pinned down by automatic weapons fire from Daniel's remaining men. The coordinated international operation was falling apart in real time, and the woman he loved was in the hands of killers. Kwame's phone buzzed again. Jomo Kenyatta Airport. Cargo Terminal 7. 1 hour. Come alone, or she dies. Without hesitation, he bolted from behind the bar toward the hotel's back exit, ignoring Margaret's shouts for him to stay put. The GPS coordinates led to the airport's industrial section, the perfect place to eliminate witnesses before fleeing the country. As sirens wailed behind him and the gunfight continued to rage in the hotel, Kwame realized that all his wealth, all his technology, all his careful planning meant nothing. The only thing that mattered was saving Zara, even if it cost him his life. Because sometimes love wasn't about testing the other person. Sometimes it was about proving yourself worthy of their devotion. The cargo terminal was exactly as desolate as Kwame had expected. Rows of shipping containers under harsh industrial lighting, with plenty of places to hide bodies and few witnesses to worry about. He found Terminal 7 and stepped inside, hands raised to show he was unarmed. Very touching, Mr. Asani. Robert Daniels emerged from behind a stack of crates, no longer bothering with his businessman persona. Behind him, 2 armed men flanked a shipping container with its doors open. Inside, Zara was tied to a chair, conscious but obviously drugged. Let her go, Kwame said. Your fight is with me. Actually, our fight is with anyone who can testify against our network. Dr. Mwangi has seen too much, knows too much. Just like the witnesses in Dubai. She's just a doctor. She has nothing to do with your money laundering operation. She has everything to do with it. She's your weakness, Mr. Asani, the leverage that ensures your continued cooperation. Daniels signaled to his men, who dragged Zara's chair to the edge of the container. Even drugged, she was fighting against her restraints, her medical training probably helping her stay conscious despite whatever they'd given her. Here's what's going to happen, Daniels continued. You're going to authorize several large financial transfers from your accounts to ours. Compensation for the disruption your police friends caused to our operations. How much? Everything. Your entire legitimate fortune. Consider it payment for Dr. Mwangi's life. Kwame looked at Zara, seeing her eyes focus on him with desperate clarity. Even bound and drugged, she was trying to communicate something. Her gaze kept darting to something behind Daniels, some kind of signal he couldn't interpret. The transfers will take time, Kwame said, stalling. International banking, security protocols. We have time. Our plane doesn't leave for 2 hours. But as Daniel spoke, Kwame finally understood what Zara had been trying to tell him. Behind the criminals, barely visible in the shadows, tactical officers were moving into position. Margaret's team had followed him despite his attempt to come alone. The question was whether they could take down Daniel's men before Zara got caught in the crossfire. You know, Kwame said loudly, hoping Margaret's team could hear, this whole thing started because I thought Zara only loved me for my money. How ironic, Daniels replied. Now you get to prove your love by giving away every shilling you have. The funny thing is I was completely wrong about her. She would have loved me if I was still running that internet cafe in Kibra. She would have loved me if I was actually paralyzed. She would have loved me if I lost everything. Touching, but irrelevant. No, it's not irrelevant, because it means I don't need to test her anymore. I know her heart. The question is, do I have the courage to prove mine? Before Daniels could respond, Kwame did something that surprised everyone in the terminal. He stepped directly into the line of fire between the criminals and the police positions. Take the money, he told Daniels. All of it. But let her walk out of here alive. Kwame, no. Zara's voice was stronger now, the drugs wearing off. Don't do this. I'm doing what I should have done months ago, he called back to her. I'm choosing trust over fear, love over money, truth over deception. Daniels laughed coldly. Noble sentiment. But you're both going to die anyway. That's when Margaret Chabet's voice cut through the terminal like a blade. Armed police. Drop your weapons now. The industrial space erupted in gunfire and tactical lights as both sides opened up. But Kwame stayed exactly where he was, shielding Zara with his body as bullets flew around them. In the chaos that followed, he heard Daniel scream in pain as police bullets found their target. The other criminals were going down one by one, their escape plan collapsing under professional tactical assault. When the shooting finally stopped, Kwame found himself on the ground next to Zara's overturned chair, both of them miraculously unharmed. Margaret stood over them, smoking pistol in hand, as her team secured the scene. That, Margaret said grimly, was either the bravest or stupidest thing I've ever seen. Both. Zara gasped as Kwame untied her restraints. Definitely both. As sirens approached, and international law enforcement began the complex process of dismantling a multi-billion-dollar criminal network, Kwame held Zara close and realized that sometimes the greatest test of love isn't what you're willing to endure for someone. It's what you're willing to sacrifice. Epilogue, 6 months later. The new internet cafe in Kibra was exactly like the old one, except for the bulletproof glass and the discreet security cameras. Kwame Asani sat behind the same battered desk where Zara had first found him 5 years earlier, helping kids with their homework and dreaming of bigger things. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more incredible stories of love, betrayal, and redemption. Most of his fortune was gone, seized as evidence, returned to victims, or donated to legitimate charities to atone for the blood money that had unknowingly funded his empire. But he'd kept enough to rebuild from scratch, the right way this time. Any regrets? Zara asked, entering the cafe in her simple wedding dress. They decided to hold their ceremony here, in the place where their love had begun, with the community that had watched them both grow. About losing the money? No. About testing your love with that ridiculous paralysis scheme? Every day. Good. Because if you ever lie to me again about anything, and I mean anything, I'm going to actually paralyze you. Professionally. Kwame laughed, pulling her close. I love you too, Dr. Asani. Not Dr. Asani yet. You still have to marry me first. Outside the cafe, their wedding guests were gathering, kids from the slums, doctors from Kenyatta Hospital, even Margaret Chabet, who'd become an unlikely friend during the international trials that had dismantled the money laundering network. As they walked toward their future together, Kwame realized that the greatest fortune wasn't the billions he'd lost, but the trust he'd finally learned to deserve. Sometimes the most valuable things couldn't be tested or measured or quantified. Sometimes love was simply a choice to believe in each other, every single day. The end. Did you enjoy this epic saga of love, deception, and redemption in the heart of Kenya? Like this video if Kwame and Zara's story kept you on the edge of your seat. Subscribe for more incredible African romance stories with twists that will blow your mind. And comment below, do you think Kwame deserved forgiveness? Or should Zara have walked away? Your engagement helps us bring you more amazing stories like this one.